Welcome to episode 278 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing Jim Mercurio, who's a writer and author of the new book, The Craft of Scene Writing. He's got a unique approach to writing the actual scenes in a screenplay, so we dive into that and discuss some of the specific tactics to strengthen your scenes. So stay tuned for that interview. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving me a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking or sharing it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcast, and then just look for episode number 278. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I'll teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide. I'll teach you how to write a professional logline and query letter and how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. Really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing Jim Mercurio. Here is the interview. Welcome, Jim, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ashley. Yeah, I think we'll have a lot of fun.
So to start out, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background. Where did you grow up and how did you get interested in the entertainment business?
I grew up in a small town near Western Pennsylvania, and it's funny. My friend's father was one of the first places to have VHS players back in the day. So he used to bring home all the movies he'd want to watch, French Connection, Godfather, The Conversation, all these 70s classics. So I didn't necessarily come to film as the kid of those Star Wars. I always had this weird thing of films were for adults. But I went to film school, University of Michigan, and I wrote for Creative Screenwriting magazine when I got out to Los Angeles. And basically, not to be a cliche, in my head I always I wanted to be a director. I'm an extrovert. I like dealing with people, and I love the intensity of being on a film set. Mm-hmm. So I was learning screenwriting because I knew I had to be part of it. But I sort of fell in love with it along the way. So I was writing about it, taking classes. I would give notes here and there, sort of working development. So I started realizing I was pretty good at talking and teaching about development and also the craft. Mm-hmm. So the creative screenwriting, I directed 40 to DVD. So I just, as a teacher, focusing on craft was something that I realized I was kind of good at, and working with a story analyst. So the same way I promote writers, do what you do what you're special at. Mm-hmm. Screenwriting was a specific thing because of my experience as a filmmaker and my kind of, my forte at talking about craft.
Sure. I
just kind of stumbled upon, this thing while I'm making low-budget indies, writing some non-guild stuff, kind of grinding it out a lot of typical screenwriters.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So let's dig into your new book, The Craft of Scene Writing. Maybe to start out, you can just give us a quick overview. What is that book all about, and why is it different than all the other screenwriting books?
Well, it's interesting because I know what you do at your company about selling screenplays and marketing. In a way, what's great and powerful about it is a compliment. It's the thing that not as many people are focusing on. Mm-hmm. And the same thing with the craft of scene writing. It is the first ever, I'm pretty sure, screenwriting book that focuses solely books that were fiction or different genres that focus on scene. It was the first one. So it's personally, it was well, what do I do well that's different and special? But then on a practical level, it's this craft and execution stuff isn't talked about as much as story structure, dramaturgy, that stuff. So if you look at all the classical screenwriting books, they'll tell you, and I don't really have much to add. I mean, I'll say some books are better than others, but I don't have much to add about constructing a story or where things go. I mean, I'm not bad at it. I'll talk with clients about it or give them different ways to think about it. Because, I've read everything that's out there, but I felt kind of proud that I found one little area that hadn't been talked about as much, and that's the individual craft and the focus on, the nitty-gritty of scene writing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Go on.
So I was just going to say, so it's not a necessarily an emphasis that the actual scene is more important than structure. It's just you hadn't seen this particular book. You're not necessarily down on the structure.
I'm not saying at all. I mean, like in improv, they say, you say yes and. Mm-hmm. I have no reason to dismiss or say, no, structure's bad.
Yeah.
I'm saying yes to that, but and this will also help. Because look, I know I know structure and storytelling is really important. And there's a book I wrote out by Eric Bork about the idea. I know concept and just the idea and your premise is important. I talk about that a little bit in my book. However, I also believe execution and taking the best concept in the world, you still have to make it work on the page.
Sure.
So nowadays, with the way the spec script market is, back in the 90s, you'd have a cool concept and it would sell based on, that's kind of interesting, we'll develop it. But they don't do that anymore very much. Mm-hmm. So it's I want people to execute it. So even if you do think out the best concept, which is very practical, and tell a great story, it still has to happen at the execution stage, because there's not a whole lot of money for development. Spec sales are different than they were years ago. And also, to be honest, if you want your script to attract packageable talent, actors and directors, in a way it has to be director bait or actor bait. It has to be on the page. Someone has to read it and say, yeah, I see it as a movie. And then for an actor, your characters not only have to be great or sound dramatically sound, meaning they're based in a real honest place, they also have to have great lines and be great conflict and kind of what I call actor bait. Mm-hmm. I don't mean just being flashy or showy just for the heck of it. I mean giving people, the actors, great moments, great dialogue, and sometimes a little bit of monologue, a little bit of a show-offy, rant or diatribe. But you want to make it actors want to play this. Because those attachments can make the difference between great sample in a movie that's being made, mm-hmm. and also an agent or manager saying, wow, we could package this. This is ready to go out to directors and actors. So I feel there is a practical business side of my stuff, but I just don't emphasize it. It's not what I do best. And someone wants to know about marketing, I'll send them to you.
Mm-hmm.
You do that and focus on that. I don't want to waste my time or someone else's with stuff that anybody else could do or other people you do better. So I focus on what I do really well. I think the book does a great job of that without saying, no, ignore this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But this is definitely part of the...
Yeah. So exactly part of the whole overall picture. So maybe let's dig into some of the actual parts of the book. You've got it divided up into sections. The first section is called fundamentals. Maybe you can talk us through that. What is sort of fundamentally, what is a scene in a screenplay?
Well, I think I pointed this out in the book. I mean, everybody's got their own idea of a scene intuitively, and it's probably, 110% right. But the thing is, though, kind of bring a little detail. So I get for a moment, very technical, it's a single unit of action, unified by time and space. There'll be a change, a climactic twist, and usually that'll involve a change in the story and the character. I get very specific, just so that everybody knows what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. But then I say Mike Nichols' definition about a scene being either a negotiation or a fight or seduction, that might be just as helpful to you. Or you might, as you're writing, figure out, to me, I need to think of a scene as a goal and an obstacle, and everything else flows from there. And I don't say no to that. It's yes and. Yes, I'll say yes to that. But let me just give you really specific details so you can wrestle it out. Or if you have, in your mind, you're thinking, why does there always have to be a change in character and in the action, or in the action and the character? And I try to make a little argument for that. Mm-hmm. But then I basically go down into a scene and break it down to very kind of very strict, kind of somewhat left-brained at times ideas. But then I'll take an idea like a reversal or the climax of a scene or a surprise, and basically give you the craft of it. I don't believe you're going to be as theoretical and left-brained as I am sometimes in this first part, but I want you to understand, here's what a surprise looks like. A surprise that goes way to the right, wow, that's crazy surprise, will be balanced by, if that's a zigzag, if that's a zag, the zig is, let's go to the absolute opposite way before we go to that surprise, because it'll accentuate it, it'll bolster it. And I basically try to find language that says, well, what is the opposite? If a surprise is I say basically a surprise is a frustrated expectation. Mm-hmm. So if the surprise goes to the right, way to the left is the expectation where you thought you were going to go. And if you specifically know that the shape of a surprise, the way a twist and a reversal works is by going way to the zig to the left before you go to the right. I'm just trying to make it really clear for people. And then this will all build on your intuition. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying hey, these are rules and you better write these down like they're from God. I'm just saying, let me break this down and make you understand it beyond intuition, and then take it into your mind and your brain and your heart any way you want. And it can't hurt what you're doing, because I'm not trying to go against what you know and intuition, but I'm trying to like balance it out with some really concrete like craft ideas.
Sure. And I wonder if you can, I think that what you're talking about there with the reversals and the surprise, I think is fantastic. And maybe you can just give us like an example from an actual movie, the zig and then the zag of the surprise. I'd be curious.
Well,
if you could just...
Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I was just going to say I would be curious just to hear an actual example from a movie that we all know.
Well, I would say that every great reversal or moment in a scene has it in there. So it's like read chapter 2, there's the pitch, and then go watch every great movie, you'll see it. But like, I just did this guest blog for one of the companies. I was talking about the moment in the Hangover, right? They wake up and they're drunk and they're like in the hotel suite. And the idea is the joke is they forget about the night before, right? And I was looking at that moment. I was like, that's a pretty fun surprise. It's a pretty great turning point. Like, it's pretty clear. But then I was in a class, and I said, okay, guys, do you remember what happened right before to set it up? And no one did. But I said, you do, but you don't know it. I said, well, what was the night before? And they were like, well, it was a party. What do you do at parties? And they got around to, hey, making a toast. What kind of things do you say at a toast? And they were like floundering a little bit. I said, well, remember now. This is the moment before it was all about forgetting and not remembering. And they got to a night we'll always remember, or to a night we'll never forget. And actually, that's very much the line, to a night the four of us will never forget. And it's like, it's almost like reverse engineering. Like, that kind of line, that kind of moment has to be there to make the next one actually better. And now, when it's seamless, you don't remember that, or you don't like focus on that. But it's like that's the line exactly before. It's like perfectly setting up and contrapuntal or whatever, like the opposite. But that's the zig before the zag. It's like, let me say, this will be a night we will never forget, right? And then cut to, what's next? They forget it. It's like, it doesn't feel clunky or like crap. It feels like, oh, that's funny. That's a punchline. So it's like, it's there even when you don't necessarily see it. But it's like, in retrospect, it's so obvious. Like, when you watch a movie a second or third time and you know where it's going, now you see the setups more clearly. So I just point out things like that of like, some of your favorite surprises, reversals, moments in movies. There's a counterbalance. There's a craft that takes a zig to the left before you go to the right. And I just kind of point that out and, very clearly so that you can then incorporate that into your instinct and your writing process.
Yeah. No, that's a fantastic example. I do appreciate that. I wonder if you could give us some examples on the same thing of exposition. I know exposition is something that a lot of new writers struggle with, getting all that information out. Maybe you can give us a couple tips on exposition in a scene.
Sure. Well, for instance, like if we go back to the fundamentals in the first few chapters, talk about a scene being beat by beat. And a beat is like an action. It has an intention. Like, I want to seduce you, or I want to convince you, or I want to get something from you. So if you go through your lines and you ever hit a moment where it's like, it's sharing information or it's giving information, or the point of this is to get it out so the audience can have it. Like, you just know, like, no, that's not really a possible way to do it. So I try to give a general way to think about exposition. It's like, you want to take the information you have that is necessary to the story, but there's always a hard way through it. There's always a way that will cast a character or challenge them or be difficult for someone. And it's like, you find that person. If you can't find that person, usually it means that either the characters are wrong or the information isn't kind of necessary. Because if something's important to the story, moves us forward, causes conflict, someone is going to have a strong reaction to it. So, like, if two cops are sitting at a scene of a murder or something, and they're saying, oh, here are the details, blah, 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 and they're just going through it. Like, that's obviously really banal. It's not important to them. It's just facts. But now let's say they're saying, in fact, let's even use that as an example. Like, ironically, let's say they are saying this passionately, and very quickly the relative or the wife or the husband of the deceased person overhears their casualness and is now offended by it. So now that quick little moment of flat details could become immediate conflict to someone else. Or they could make the mistake of presenting it like neutral information to a person who's surprised, right, reveals themselves as, the person who it really matters to. So there's your zig and zag. Like, I'm going to think this is unemotional and not important. I'm going to give you information. Surprise, it's the most important emotional information in the world based on who you just told it to. So it's like, it's basically trying to figure out how to take what you have and create conflict and create a difficult, challenging way to do it. And it's like, I say, this is not an easy thing to do. Because if you take my definition of this, it's basically, I'm saying, I'm like, take the things you have in your story or the information and make it the best, most dramatic thing you can possibly make it be. And that's like a metaphor, or that's like a description of what dramatic writing is in general. So it's not easy, but it's the same principles. It's like, use your stuff, do what it's best at, do what you're best at, use that stuff to create the most interesting, conflict-filled, dramatic, difficult moment for the characters. So it's like, you're going to look at what you have and you're going to rearrange it and arrange it so that it comes out of the right person's mouth or to the right person or in a way that offends someone. It's basically taking what you have and twisting it so that it works to, your most powerful end.
Yeah. And do you have an example off the top of your head on that one? I think the Hangover example was great for the reversal. Do you have a example for exposition where a script really handled a lot of exposition well?
So, in my book, I do this example from the movie Heat, and it's Al Pacino's, the lead guy. He's the audacious Al Pacino character, like always. And they're out checking out Neil, the Robert De Niro's character, and his crew. He and his cops are looking around, and they're looking at stuff. They don't seem to really know what's going on. And all of a sudden, Pacino starts talking, starts teasing his people, starts self-deprecating a little bit. And he realizes that the bad guys have played them. They're the ones being watched. Although he was there to survey the bad guys, they tricked him and they're doing it to him. But he doesn't say that right away. He doesn't come out and say, "Hey guys, by the way, surprise, they're watching us." He starts realizing it. He starts making fun of them. He lures them in. Maybe they'll be smart enough to figure it out, but they're not. And then he finally reveals why he's teasing them, why he's being sarcastic about it, why he's being this way. It's like, oh, they're watching us. So it's a surprise to the characters. There's some conflict, and then he's teasing them and mocking them and pushing them a little bit. But he's also, now you could say this is the writer doing craft, or it's the character, playing around. I think it works. He's actually kind of finding a fun way to explain his discovery and make it clear to them, but it also works for the audience. And it's well, if you know what he's talking about as an audience, that's good, because he's not letting the characters get ahead of you. But if you don't, you're like, wait a second, what's he talking about? Why is he mad at his people? Why is he taking this tongue-in-cheek? And all of a sudden, it's aha, the information. So the information that they're being watched could be done very bad and very boringly, but they do it within character, within some fun speech, within mystery and suspense. What's he talking about? So it's once again, make it as fun as you can. And the very cliche example is you and I are cops, you're in room A, I'm in room B. I could say, hey, Ashley, come in room B, there's a bloody body here. Or I could say, Ashley, quick, get in here now. And all I'm doing is I'm creating a moment of suspense. You have a little bit of suspense. I'm toying with you. We're toying with the audience a little bit. So you have a quick second of oh, what's Ashley going to see when he walks into the room with Jim, his buddy in the cop movie, right? What's he going to see? There's an example of sometimes it's overused. Where you take the information and say, what can I do with it to make it intriguing, suspenseful, dramatic, conflict-filled? So it's just thinking about organizing your information in the best way.
Yeah. So one of the advanced topics that you cover is breaking the rules with style. I noticed that chapter, and maybe you can talk about that a little bit. First off, what are the rules? And second off, how can you break them with style without seeming like an amateur, as opposed to seeming like someone who's fully in tune with sort of the craft?
Right. No, that's a great question. Let me emphasize something, because I've been talking about this topic, and I'm developing a version of it for a couple conferences. It's when I say the rules, I'm saying that a little bit tongue-in-cheek, because there are a bunch of, rules, what you can see, what you see in here, or script should be in this format, there should be about 110 pages. That stuff all makes sense, and I'm not really going to argue that. But there's certain quote-unquote rules that seem to come up or seem to be there looming over screenwriters, don't use voiceovers. And I'm saying in this voice, don't use flashbacks. And more specific, don't write long scenes. Don't have too much dialogue. And now here's the thing. So when I say rules, I'm kind of being tongue-in-cheek. They're there as unwritten rules written by so-called gurus or the imaginary they, the they who say those things. I think some of them are good intentions. I think for a beginning writer or a writer with not a lot of skill, writing a long scene can have a lot of pitfalls. It can be static. It can be repetitive. It can be long-winded. It can not make its point. Or too much dialogue is not a great place to start. However, if you understand the principles, the fear that makes people start saying these rules, you can worry about that. So a long scene, if I say the reason why I want you to not do that is that it's undramatic, it's static, and all this stuff, what are things you can do? You can break the scene into little movements, like actions, like that great long therapy scene with Robin Williams, and who plays Sean, and in Good Will Hunting, and Will, but Matt Damon, that long therapy scene is like, well, first you have the math teacher there, and then Will comes in, and then he has to push the teacher out, or the professor out, and then it's him and Will. They have a nice long scene with this movement and blocking and visual things, which are nice. Then they have their conflict moment where he puts him up against the wall. Then Will leaves and he comes back in. So you have shifts of like characters, like there's 3 characters, and there's 2, and then there's 1, and then there's a different 2. So it goes through movements. Or like the middle of the opening scene in Glorious Bastards. It's for literally the bomb under the table dramatic irony thing that Hitchcock talks about. You show Shoshana's family underneath the floorboards, literally under the table, like a bomb under the table. So now there's dramatic irony. Now we watch the rest of the scene from a different perspective, knowing that, oh, we now know that there is a Jewish family under there, and it totally changes. So there's rules you can do to make sure it has moves, that make sure it doesn't lull, that it's visual and not just talking. There's like craft elements that allow you to do that. And the same thing with the dialogue scene. Like if you look at the opening of Social Network, the long scene with his BU, Boston University girlfriend, and Zuckerberg who's going to Harvard. The words are actions. Like she says, why do you think my life's so easy? Or something like that. And he says, because you go to BU. It's like, those are words, but those are actually actions too. Like they have conflict, there's subtext, they're revealing characters. So in a way, that big long dialogue scene, the talking scene, which you're not supposed to do, is done so well, and it's fast, and it's conflict filled. And for instance, it's doing everything that an opening image does. It sets up the world, the rules, the character, his thought process, some of the themes. But then ironically, so it's like you're breaking the rules, but you're also using them. The moment after that is like this, 3 or 4 sentences about him walking back to his dorm. But in the movie, Fincher turns into like $1 million sequence going through the campus back to his dorm. So it's like that dialogue scene, which is a great dialogue scene. It shows you the things you have to do. But it's also breaking the rule. Like, wait a second, opening images should be images. They should be visual. They should bring you into the world. Well, Sorkin does the classical opening image right after that scene. So it's like he gives them both to you, but he rearranges the order a little bit. But even he is understanding the principles, like, hey, an image, visuals, opening things that sum things up are very important. And Fincher does that in that second moment. But also the talkie scene does everything that a dramatic short scene or visual scene should do also. So it's like, if you understand what you're trying to avoid or the principles, like don't be boring, don't be exposition, don't be long-winded, don't get off track. If you understand those ideas and address them, then you don't have to worry about the nitpicky rules about, don't use this or don't use that. Like if a parenthetical is redundant, the guy is angry and he's red-faced and he's yelling, hey, maggots, drop and give me 50. Do I need angry as a parenthetical? No. It's because it's redundant. It's wasting words. So like that principle of not being redundant, not being static, not like giving more information than you need, that principle is more important than don't use a parenthetical. So I try to give people the tools to understand what they're avoiding when dealing with those so-called rules. But you do have to be aware of the principles of storytelling that you don't want to violate. That's what the rules are trying to capture. But I'm trying to be more specific. Like, here are the things you're avoiding. Avoid those, and then you can break those rules with style, with craft, by doing it well.
Voiceover is something that comes up, and I'm in a writer's group, and it comes up quite often. And I've been asking a number of the podcast guests about that. What's your take on voiceover? I think you just you just laid out a great sort of thesis for like the Social Network and how he was able to really break. I mean, those first 10 pages are so crucial, and I don't think there's anybody on the planet that would recommend to a screenwriter that they have a 10-minute scene in a restaurant just to open the movie.
Right, exactly.
But what's your take on voiceover?
But even if you read that, well, I'll tell you what's interesting, because I realized like I didn't address flashbacks and voiceovers directly, or not very much in the book. I thought, well, if I ever go back and do a second edition, or there would be a good topic to do. I don't have a big theoretical. I haven't thought about voiceover and flashbacks that way. So I don't have some big theoretical lesson about it, but it's back to those principles. Like a flashback, for instance, if it stops the movie in its tracks, if it feels like exposition, if it's kind of tangential, then I'm like, no. But like, if you think of a flashback as like, no, it's not whether it's the past or present. In the story, the thing we need to know or feel or understand next, if the flashback goes there, and we can't really appreciate what comes after that, then the flashback, it's not even a flashback. It's just the way you're telling the story. So it's like, as a writer, my approach to those right now are very intuitive. And, based on all the stuff that I think about like in my book, like, it's back to principles. If voiceover is necessary to explain, or it's redundant, or it's like you're just jamming in character information just to do it. I say no. But if it adds irony, if it creates conflict, if it's necessary to give an extra level to what we're seeing, or if you're an unreliable narrator, so it's not so much like this is the way you're supposed to do it, these are the rules. It's more like the principles. If your voiceover is adding something special that can only be added by this, and now is when we need it. And also, if you're going to do it not just one time as a fix, but if your concept, for the most part, incorporates voiceover as a technique you're using, like in the same, like in I don't watch as much TV, but like the House of Cards, where he talks to the camera.
Sure.
If you did that 3 times in a season as like a cool, clever way to get out of something, then like, no, you're just adding that one concept. You're being lazy. Do it a better way. But if voiceover or breaking the wall, fourth person stuff, like the fourth wall, if that's part of your story and your storytelling, and that's what you're doing, then fine. It's integrated. Is it used ironically? Is it used to bring something special to the moment that would only come from that? So I guess I don't have fast, hard rule. It's more intuitive. It's like, is it doing the things that good storytelling is? It's not acting like exposition. It's not being redundant. It's not explaining. But it's like, hey, this is a cool, clever, fun way to get through this. We're doing it often. We're in control of it. We're never getting lazy with it. It's not a crutch. But if it's doing good things and you're using information in a really great way, that's when I would say yes to it. So, yeah, sorry I don't have a pithy lesson about it, but this is where, like I said, the book would go very left-brained and very specific about things like, well, expectation here and surprise here. But sometimes, like, I just want you to understand these ideas on a deeper level, because then you'll be able to answer your own questions of like, well, is it doing the bad things stories shouldn't do? And if it's not, then I have no problem with a voiceover or a flashback.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think that is a great way of looking at it. And one of the final things from your book I want to talk about, and it kind of leads into voiceover a little bit, because a lot of times I feel like voiceover is done out of almost as a stylistic choice. And one of the things that you hit on in your book is this idea of personal voice. And I'd be curious to get your thoughts on that. What is a personal voice, and how do you develop your own voice?
Well, it's interesting because I wrote chapter 13, which is called Your Voice, and I was done with it. And then the one copy editor that was helping me out, that was really about content, Julie Marsh, who has a great development mind, she pointed out, no, you have to go deeper. Because I started out with this first notion of voice of like, your script is so consistent and so faithful to what you set up and what you promised that it's like totally unique. Because nothing could, like, if you have your concept and your character and his background and theme and location, you put that in there, your scene will be so specific. I go to a very funny genre film and come up with a line that can only come from those basic things. And then she pointed out, it's like, Jim, but you have to go deeper, because it's more personal to people. There's sometimes themes or obsessions or a way of telling a story. And I thought about it for about 6 months, and I came up with the next chapter, your personal voice. So you got to be consistent. You have to use what's best and special about your script, concept, theme, character. But then there's also more you can challenge. You can challenge things that are more universal, personal, like, it might bug you that all stories are about, white men and white females and not homosexual relationships, or it's always about, this people or this class, or it never talks about important things like, you want to talk about class and do your like version of I. Daniel Blake or, realism. It never talks about food stamps or medicine rationing or like, insurance. So it's like there might be things that are very important to you that clash with the unwritten rules of cinema, having to do with the rules of cinema or even the rules of society. And like, you have to be personal, you have to make some assumptions like that and break those rules and let that be part of your storytelling, so that you're challenging bigger things than just, I'm transcending the genre because I've decided to make, my character black, or I decided to make my character female. Now, I'll say one thing, like I talk about Aliens, or Alien and Silence of the Lambs, just by making this female lead a character already transcends the genre. Done well, obviously, transcends the genre. And I would say in Silence of the Lambs, by following the ripple effect through, it actually makes it kind of a masterpiece. So sometimes it's a small scale disruption or change or thing that you take control of can do a huge thing. But then when you start talking about ideology or patriarchy or society, these big things that matter, they can be really special and unique and allow you to kind of like disrupt things and challenge things. So it's like, I want people to do what's special about their script, which is story, concept, that kind of stuff, but also what's special about them. Like they have a perspective on politics or race or gender or even sex. The way sex scenes in movies are totally cliched and like they don't really they're happier being R-rated because of violence than they are with like realistic sex. So you might say, I really want to show this honestly. I don't want to fade out, or I don't want to gloss over this, or I don't want the camera to pan away. I want to do this seriously. And what happens is when you take one little piece that's important to you and fight for it, even if you're not like aware of the fact you're being political or that you're bucking the status quo, it will actually do that just inherently, because if you take that one thing, you'll be violating and challenging and contesting kind of unwritten rules of cinema. So it's like, take what you know that's special and unique about you, import it into your script, and make sure that every part of your script has that. So it's like basically just honoring what's special about you and following through. Like in the same way I would say I wrote my book, like I wanted to put what was special about me. I don't talk about craft. I don't talk about marketing my book. I'm not good at that. I'm good about craft, nitty-gritty, detailed stuff, thinking like a filmmaker, analyzing scenes, making sure actors want to say those lines. So I wrote that, and the same thing with your script. Yeah, you want to be faithful to the rules and the story that you set up. That's part of it. They have consistency, but it's also recognizing what's special about you. What do you do better than everybody else? And if you can put that into your story with consistency, always, it's sometimes labeling it so you know what to look for. Like, I have 5 scenes in my script that aren't special, that don't do what I do best. Maybe I think to myself, I do sexual politics and men, women relationships better than anybody, but I don't do it in this scene, and I don't do it in these other 3 scenes. I got to make sure I beef those up and like, you know, do what I do special in those moments. So it's about being consistent, but also then emotionally finding what you're good at and honoring it and making sure it's on the page. And sorry that was long-winded.
Yeah, no, that was great.
That's what it is.
Yeah, that was great. How can people buy The Craft of Scene Writing? Do you know where it's available?
I mean, it's basically pretty much everywhere books are sold, especially online. I'll tell you this: if you want to save some money, Amazon right now it has a huge price cut on the ebook or the Kindle version, and it's been hovering around the top 20 in screenwriting. I think it's because they thought they would sell more books with the low price. It's under $6, so it's a deal. But also, it's the book is available at a discount and prime shipping. So I think go to Amazon, and then when you love it, make sure you write a review afterwards. So it's like it's the best price there, and also I think the reviews there help it out too. So like check it out, and also people like, to me, part of writing the book was like, and the fact that I'm happy that it's out now is, like I said, I'm an extrovert. I'm a director at heart. So the idea of the book inspires people. I want to hear about it. Ask me questions, challenge me, like come find me. I work as a script consultant. You can check out my site, but more importantly, ask me questions. Tell me like I want to hear about how it's impacting the world and like meet new people and talk about it. So like, yeah, definitely Barnes & Noble, Border, Amazon, Walmart, every place that you can imagine a book, it's there. But I know specifically it's on sale at Amazon. It's Prime, so it's free shipping, and that would be great if you love it. Put a review there too.
Yeah. So perfect. Hopefully people will do that. What's the best way for people to keep up with what you're doing? You just mentioned that you had a website. You can mention that now. Twitter, Facebook, anything you're comfortable sharing. I'll round up for the show notes.
Yeah, sure. And by the way, I'll get this information if you want to add it later. Intro. It's my website. My name, jamespmercurio.com. My email's jim@that. But you can come there. I do consulting on stuff. There's really no hard sell. If you like what I do and what I say, and you need somebody like me, you'll know. Come to me. But there's also newsletters, the free newsletter. You can sign up for there. You can sign up about classes, and there's actually some content to like old articles and stuff I've done. So yeah, go to my website, send me an email, check it out. I have a DVD set, I have the book, and I work with writers one-on-one. It's all kind of it's there on my website.
Okay, perfect. I will link to all of that. Well, Jim, I really appreciate you coming on today and talking with me. This has been a great interview, and I think people will get a lot out of it.
No, thanks, Ashley. I appreciate it. And I appreciate what you're doing, too, is like finding your own niche in a way to complement what's going on with the craft stuff. I think it's great for writers to have that side, too.
So, thank you. Thank you very much. So, perfect. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
All right. Take it easy.
Okay, talk to you soon.
Bye. A quick plug for the SYS Screenwriting Analysis Service. It's a really economical way to get a high-quality professional evaluation on your screenplay. When you buy our 3-pack, you get evaluations at just $67 per script for feature films and just $55 for teleplays. All the readers have professional experience reading for studios, production companies, contests, and agencies. You can read a short bio on each reader on our website, and you can pick the reader who you think is the best fit for your script. Turnaround time time is usually just a few days, but rarely more than a week. The readers will evaluate your script on 6 key factors: concept, character, structure, marketability, tone, and overall craft, which includes formatting, spelling, and grammar. Every script will get a grade of pass, consider, or recommend, which should help you roughly understand where your script might rank if you were to submit it to a production company or agency. We can provide an analysis on features or television scripts. We also do proofreading without any analysis. We will also look at a treatment or outline and give you the same analysis on it. So if you're looking to vet some of your project ideas, this is a great way to do it. We will also write your logline and synopsis for you. You can add this logline and synopsis writing service to an analysis, or you can simply purchase this service as a standalone product. As a bonus, if your screenplay gets a recommend or a consider from one of our readers, you get to list the screenplay in the SYS Select database, which is a database for producers to find screenplays and a big part of our SYS Select program. Producers are in the database searching for material on a daily basis, so it's another great way to get your material in front of them. As a further bonus, if your script gets a recommend from one of our readers, your screenplay will get included in our monthly Best Of newsletter. Each month we send out a newsletter that highlights the best screenplays that have come through our script analysis service. This is a monthly newsletter that goes out to our list of over 400 producers who are actively looking for material. So again, this is another great way to get your material out there. So if you want a professional evaluation of your screenplay at a very reasonable price, check out www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. Again, that's sellingyourscreenplay.com/consultants. On the next episode of the podcast, I'm going to be interviewing Victoria Fratz and Aaron Fradkin. They are a writing-producing duo who just did a film called Electric Love. We talk about how they wrote the film and how they were able to raise money for it. They have a lot of really innovative, interesting ways that they went out and tried to raise money for this film. So we really dig into that. And if you're thinking about potentially producing a film of your own, this is a great episode to listen to. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. That's the show. Thank you for listening.